Hi everyone, my name is Lewis Strong and welcome to my first episode of Headstrong, a podcast where I sit down and have a chat with a variety of well-known individuals about their struggles and vulnerabilities in their lives and careers that have made them who they are today. These feelings of self-worth, anxiety and vulnerability can be experienced by anyone. And so I hope I can provide you, the listener, with some inspiration to get you on a path to becoming headstrong, to believe in yourself, to talk about your vulnerabilities and reinforce your self-worth. So my first guest is Dr. Alex George. We sat down to not only discuss life on Love Island, but I really wanted to talk to Dr. Alex about his unique outlook as both a celebrity and a qualified medical doctor on mental health and well-being, and how all of us can go through rough moments. Dr. Alex George, thank you so much for coming to have a chat with me.
Thank you so much for asking me to come in. I was really excited to be here.
You've had a pretty big last 12 months, right?
It has been a bit of a big year, I think. Not one that I really expected. I do like kind of look back and think, last February when this all kind of started, if you like, or I became aware of what might be coming, I'd never have believed it, really. It was literally my birthday last year, February the 15th.
Put that in the diaries, everybody.
In the diary, yeah. I'd had a night out with my friends that I think I was the next day I was recovering from maybe a slight hangover, and I got a message through on Instagram about Love Island, and then it all went on from there, really.
So you got contacted and poached, did you, for Love Island?
I don't know if it was poached. I still, honestly, to this day, don't understand why really they messaged me about it. I didn't have a particular following. My Instagram page was nonsense, really. There's nothing particularly exciting on there. I don't know. They said come for an interview, and I kind of was quite reluctant to start with, actually.
Sure.
It took a lot for me to kind of go... Because I loved the show the year before, absolutely loved it. And actually, there's a funny moment on the final of last year with Chris and Kem and all that. I said to my mates, do you know what? I'd actually love to go on that show. And I said it as a joke, never applied, nothing. And then obviously that came through. I was like, what? So yeah, one day I was like, do you know what? I'll go for an interview. And literally one thing happened after the next. I went for an interview one day. And the next day they called me and said they want you to meet the execs. So I was like, okay.
So that went pretty quick then?
Yeah, it did. Do you know what? It was so close to me not actually doing it. And I'll tell you why. I turned up for the interviews. There was 15, 16, 17 other guys there. And to be honest, I felt like a fish out of water in that group.
Were you a bit intimidated about that process?
I was intimidated by the people around me. They were not necessarily people that they're very different to me. I think a lot of the people that would, and I mean this in the nicest possible way, like a lot of the people that go on Love Island are very extroverted, loud, and confident. I'm not really, I'm more introverted as a person, to be honest. So I was a bit like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I've got the chat or the personality to do this. These guys are, tanned and big lads and all that. What chance have I got? And then I was like, I'll leave. I'm not going to bother. I thought, no, let's give it a go. Let's give it a go. And I was one of the last to be interviewed out of everyone. Everyone else was there for about 20 minutes, and my interview was like an hour and a half. And I was like, gosh, this is weird. That must have gone all right then. And yeah, literally the next day I was cycling home from Lewisham Hospital after a busy day in work. My phone went off. Pulled over on my bicycle and answered the phone, and the guy said, look, we loved you. Want you to meet the execs? Met the execs, I think, almost the next day, and then they were like, we want you to start the show, like to be an original. And I was like, what? Better get in the gym.
Yeah, because I listened to that on your first episode of your podcast, and you were like, look, I got told, and then I was like, right, I've got 12 weeks. It's got to start now.
I mean, you know what it's like. I mean, you obviously, for a living, you're an actor, and you have got to look good as well as part of everything else, isn't it? And there is a lot of pressure, obviously, on particularly on TV, and especially in that kind of show, that people are judging you for how you look. It's animalistic in a lot of ways, and you want to be in the best shape you can. That's just kind of how it is.
There are expectations of you for being on screen, but actually, why do you need to go on TV and have a six-pack? Obviously, the show is generating, Love Island's creating this thought of, you should have a perfect relationship and all that with body image and stuff. But actually, you look at Jack, for example. Look, he's a gorgeous human character-wise, and physically, I still think he's lovely looking, but he's not exactly your stereotypical beach bod, bodybuilder.
Absolutely. I mean, and I say this very honestly because it is the pressures that I felt, so I'm being very honest about that. And I think Love Island has opened a conversation where everyone's going, well, hang on, is this right? Like, is this a representation of society? Is our worth really placed on how many abs we've got or haven't got or whatever? And actually, I think it's fantastic that Jack won the show. You know, I'm very good friends with him. He'd be very happy for me to say that he didn't have abs. He had a very, you know, I think he looked perfectly fine, but he wasn't kind of body fat percentage of 9 or 10%, which... who cares about that anyway, really?
Who honestly looks at the numbers?
Cares, cares about that stuff. But that's the pressure sometimes these shows, I think, just by the nature of them, they put you under. And I was really proud of Jack to win it. And you know what? I think I had a fairly average... I think I was in fairly good shape, but I wasn't kind of ridiculous or anything. And actually, my focus since the show is much more with exercise and things like that, is to, A, look after my physical health and actually how fit I feel and how well I feel, and also my mental health as well, because... You know, I think exercise is so important, but if the focus is on the wrong thing, if the focus is about aesthetics or getting that perfect Instagram picture, I think you can get really astray.
I think that's really interesting that you've mentioned social media there, because on top of the TV and film aspect of what people should be looking like, people are posting photos of what people think are perfect lives, perfect bodies, but we don't know how touched up those images are. And, you know, what angles they're doing. And also, you spin the camera around, where could they be? You have no idea. It's like Love Island, you're filming this gorgeous villa, but everyone's seen those photos of what you're looking out on the other side of it. It's actually expectation versus reality, that common phrase that's thrown around.
I think, with, you know, Instagram and social media these days, everyone wants to portray a perfect life. And I think particularly if you think about... people coming off shows like Love Island, which it's an aspirational show. That's the words that United TV use. And I think that in a lot of ways, it is a feel-good show. But when you come off that show, you're almost expected to portray this lifestyle of partying, you know, Ocean Beach Club and Ibiza and holidays everywhere. And everyone feels a pressure to do that. And I think that's why I've very consciously gone, do you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm going to show myself going on the tubes that I normally ever would. I show myself doing very normal things in my life, and I'll just really display like my passions, which, you know, is health and promoting, healthcare, you know, for young people, really. I think you can easily get dragged down that route, and I think probably it's fair to say some islanders have. A lot of them, in fairness, are now trying to change that and are trying to show, do you know what, this is what it's like, particularly off the back of recent things that have happened, you know, the sad passing of Mike and stuff. So I think people are realising there are changes being made, but it's quite a lot to overhaul a mentality of a generation, which is what it really is.
I mean, we'll come back to talk about Mike in a minute, but when you came out the villa, you had probably a couple of months of self-promotion of stuff, just because you've got to do that stuff, right? Because no doubt you've probably got it in your contract with ITV, whatever. But then you went to Instagram and you said, right, I'm going back to A&E. I'm going to carry on. I've trained as a doctor. I've worked freaking hard for 4 or 5 years. I don't know as a doctor, actually. But you've put in the hard yards and you went back to A&E. Like,
I think something...
Like?
So when I came off the island, and I say this actually because it was a decision I made day one. A, I always knew I was going back, and B, to A&E, and B, the other thing was I said I'd never do a club PA, which I didn't. Yeah. And I'd never do anything that I didn't believe in. I'd never work with a brand that I didn't believe in. And I think that was so important for me because, you know, let's be honest, I could earn a lot of money doing PAs, and there's nothing against people who have done PAs because that's naturally maybe what they enjoy or lend to. But for me, I wouldn't enjoy it. So I said, do you know what? I'm going to do what I believe in and what I enjoy, and, you know, at the end of the day, it makes me feel good in doing. So yeah, I that's what I've stuck to throughout, really. And there was a day when I was like, when will I be ready to go back to A&E? I need to go back. And I woke up one morning and I remember calling my manager here at James Grant and said, do you know what? I'm going back. And I literally picked the phone to the hospital and said, I'm ready. Can I come back? And they're like, yeah, we'll have you booked in a shift 2 or 3 days later, and where to go. And actually, it was the best thing I did. It was so important for my mental health as well, to be back in a place that I knew, like, this world can be very strange and is fake in a lot of ways. But in A&E, it's real life. There's nothing else that makes you feel present than a situation of life and death. Yeah. It's a real realisation of what matters. And I think for me, going back to work, it was a real wake-up call.
Did it create brought back a sense of normality after those whirlwind few months?
Absolutely. You know, I think my head was in I think I hadn't found myself to probably January this year in terms of, like, settled in properly, because I did go through a lot on the island. I think I probably had a rougher journey, you know, even in the sense of having 9 weeks of social isolation. Well, I say social, it's not social isolation. even having 9 weeks of being isolated from family and friends, not having a phone, not even knowing what time of day it is.
I found that bizarre.
That's tough. That is tough. Being told, and I am an independent person. I've been working as a doctor for 4 years, so I'm used to making, maybe higher decisions. Like in the island, you're not able to choose necessarily when your meals start having, or when you're, going to the toilet. Things are more controlled, and it's not that. And I get that. It's part of the production. It's part of what you agree to, and I'm not complaining about it. But it is something very different to get used to. When you come off that, it's like, whoa, what has happened, kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, with do you know what? Just going back to you going back into A&E, there were two instances, literally from the time that I've known you, in the very, very short space of time that I've known you. It's when I missed your phone call just to talk about what we were going to talk about on this podcast, and you just messaged me being like, "Oh, I'm busy now. I'm just getting on the train." And I was like, "That's so nice that you're actually doing normal things that normal people do." Because so many people would be like, "Look, I want you to book me a car, get me wherever, whatever." But then then today, when you just called me and said, "Look, I'm nipping into prep. Do you want a quick coffee?" That's normal things, and it's that shows how humble you are.
It's so important. The thing is, for me, I never went on the show. Like, in hand on heart, I never went on the show for fame. To be honest, as much as anything, it was honestly like a YOLO moment. I hate to use that word, but it's like, do you know what? This is something so different that people when would you get an opportunity to do something so, on a sunny island? I've been single for 4 years. I was like, why not? Why not? And I thought, to be honest, I'd be on there for a week, especially when I walked in. I got completely par bev, and I was like, yeah, my belief was true. I'm going to be out in a week. And I thought, Joe, I'll be back in A&E. I said to the consultant, I'll see you in a fortnight, or I'll see you in 10 days. So I didn't believe that any of the rest of it would happen. So yeah, a lot of it with the fame side of things, I think there's very much pros and cons. I mean, I guess I don't know how you deal with it, but it's kind of...
I don't yet.
Well, it's just kind of... I don't know about that, but I mean, the thing is, it's kind of... There's good sides to it, and people are so lovely, and I get I was on the way here today, I was stopped, and a small dog was shoved in my arms to have a picture of this dog, and I was just like, this lady was lovely, being like, I really love what you're doing, I'm really pleased with the work you're doing with that mental health and stuff like that, and that's a really positive side, but there's also negative sides. You get some serious trolling. I had some plonker trolling me yesterday, making comments about what I'm doing, and I'm just like, people can be so outspoken and vicious, really, when they don't have a clue what they're really talking about.
I think that's such a valid point, and this will tie in nicely with what we're going to talk about next. But I think what people forget is, regardless of whether you're famous or not, you're still a human being who has feelings, and you can all suffer from mental health issues. You can have eating disorders. You can be bullied. Anyone can experience these things. And I think trolls in particular, with online and social media, they don't realise that actually a few words can go a very long way, because so many people are built either with high walls, emotional coping mechanisms, but actually some less so. And I think people don't realise that
I always say that I try and use it as a phrase that at the end of the day, whether you've got 1 follower or 1 million followers, you're still a human being at the end of a phone. And that's the way to think of it, and that's what people forget, because people do. And I noticed, in a way, because obviously, a year or so ago, I looked at all these people who are famous and thought, they're almost kind of out of reach, if you know what I mean. They're kind of like a distant figure. If I message them, they're never going to see that message. But actually, it's surprising the stuff you do see. I mean, you do get a lot. I'm not saying I sit there and look through my DMs all the time, but it's amazing what you do see, particularly if it's posted. This person that wrote about me yesterday he's got 30,000 Twitter followers, so he's very well aware that there's a chance I'm going to see what he said. But you know what? I always say, in life, there are always going to be people who try and bring you down. Doesn't matter what good you do. If you look at it objectively, I'm not being arrogant, but I work in A&E. I've probably saved a lot more lives than that guy has as a football pundit, whatever he is. And I'm trying to do something positive in the world, and I'm not being arrogant saying that. That is factual. That is my belief. But you'll always have people like that who will try and bring you down. At the end of the day, it's their unhappiness and their deep-rooted insecurities that is making them speak and behave in that way. You just can't let it bring you down, whatever you're doing. Just believe in yourself and crack on, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you said you're going to see your colleagues in a fortnight, I think you said you were going on for love. You've been single for 4 years, but I think you already knew you were coming out because you were going to be famous to an extent, and you were like, actually, I'm going to use this platform to promote things that I believe in. And the fact that your podcast, for example, is promoting all things health and giving advice to young adults, which hopefully that this podcast is going to help with. But then also, it's also the people who are catapulted into these situations of fame so quickly. You went in probably with maybe 1,000 followers or whatever, and you come out with 1 million.
I went in with 200 followers, I think.
Yeah, and then that it's difficult because people are then scared to speak about it, and I think that's something that we really need to talk about, because there's this thing of toxic masculinity where people are trying to be so macho and tough and saying, I can cope with this on my own. But I think the most important thing actually is to be vocal and speak about it. What would you say as a doctor, but then also as somebody who, like, you will have met Mike, right? So what would you say about that?
I mean, with regards to, the Mike situation, it's obviously incredibly sad what's happened, and, thoughts, as I said before, go to his family. I met him once or twice. He was really actually a very friendly chap when I met him. Really seemed like a really nice guy. Obviously, there's not been a full inquest into what's happened, but it's believed, or at least there's been a lot of talk, that it's death by suicide. It's just incredibly sad. I think we do have a big problem, a wider issue in the UK with particularly young men being awful at speaking out. In fact, the Samaritans did a survey this year very recently and found that 2 in 5 men who want help, would like to seek help, would never dream of doing so because they'd be afraid of the kind of stigma and backlash of doing it, which I think is very frightening. If you think every 90 seconds or so, someone's either taken their own life or attempted to in the UK, it's scary. And I think part of the problem is that, particularly our generation, portraying this perfect life, and people also being afraid that therefore to admit there's a problem. It's a big issue, and I think men are terrible at it. I think it is a stereotype, but broadly, I think statistics do kind of go with this. Women are a lot better about saying, do you know what, I'm not feeling very good today, or giving a call, chatting to their mates. But if you're a group of lads out in the pub, everyone's just taking the mick out of each other, saying, your girlfriend's this, or your football team's that, or whatever. No one wants to actually go, do you know what, mate, I haven't seen you online for the last few days, or you haven't been chatting in the group very much. Are you all right?
It's rare to find that in a social situation with your friends. I mean, I'm very fortunate with my group of friends because we know each other so well, to a point that if someone's not been very vocal for a while, the people are going to step in. But I don't think many people have that support network, because every relationship and friendship is different. But it's like that fantastic thing you raised up with the Samaritans as well, with that Brew Monday, which was brilliant. And I know that's only one day of the year, but actually people should take inspiration from that the whole time. So do you want to just explain what that was? Yeah,
so Samaritan's Brew Monday campaign was based around really just taking a moment, taking 5 minutes, taking 10 minutes, just sitting down with a friend, family, a relative, having a cup of tea, and actually having a proper chat about how that person's feeling. And, I agree, the concept, even though that's one day, the concept can be throughout the year. Actually, I heard, I was chatting to someone the other day, actually, and this guy was saying that in his group of friends, what they do is they do every fortnight, they hold what they call a conference on the group, on the WhatsApp, and the conference is about asking each other, is anyone got any problems, anything anyone wants to talk about? And if someone says, yeah, there's something to talk about, one of them will have a call with the other person and just chat about it. And it's just like, it's so easy. Everyone goes, yeah, I'm fine, or yeah, no problem. And it is very open, apparently, because at least one person out of the group will say, actually, I'm having a bit of work's rubbish or whatever, and then someone will give them a ring. And I think it's just a great idea. It's such a good concept, like quite a little, meet up, a board meeting every fortnight just to check in.
That's really important to say as well, because everyone thinks mental health, it's you don't know what triggers it, but it can be as simple as having a bad day at work, and then that can grind you down. You can end a relationship, you're being bullied. You can have anything can trigger these feelings of self-worth and anxiety.
Anything can trigger it off, and in fact, when we look at like high risk for very depressive episodes or feeling suicide, it can be breakdown of family, loss of relationship, loss of a close family member, something work related, finances, there's anything that can happen. And often I think sometimes it can be like the straw that breaks the camel's back. If you're having a bad run of things, then something happens, whether you break up with a girlfriend or whatever, that can be enough to kind of really push someone. Or it's in some cases all that person needs is that support over the coming months to build themselves back again, to get back to where they were, and they would never have done anything, or never have considered suicide. But sometimes in that moment, if there's no one there to catch them, they can fall through that net and really sadly do something that could have been prevented.
Do you know what I think? I'm just going to talk about myself for a couple of seconds. Basically, at the beginning of this year, I went through a breakup, and I had feelings of suicide, and you can't help these sort of feelings. I think that's what people are scared about, is if you get these feelings, you're like, oh no, why am I having them? This doesn't happen to me. But I think I held it in for a while, and then I said, do you know what, I actually need to tell somebody. And I just told my mum. She wasn't a therapist. I told her, and she goes, do you know what, thank God you've told me now, because now I'm able to support you and I can check on you. And then eventually I told some friends, and then I built myself back up to being headstrong. But yeah, it gets you, you really need to tell people about what you're feeling.
I think and it's really amazing that you've openly said that, in this situation, because it will help, the people listening to what you're talking about. People don't realise sometimes that, mental health is like a spectrum, I think. It's like a continuum. I don't think there's either good mental health or bad mental health. And if you have one or the other, you're not going to be stuck with that for the rest of your life. Or not, it can go between the two. And I think a lot of that depends on what happens in your life. If you think of, like I said it the other day, like a games console, a health bar, if you're 100% fine, things can knock you down. If there's a few things that come together, breaking up with a girlfriend, it's a big part of your life. You take a big hit from that. And you can drop to 30% happiness, and you need to get back there. Doesn't mean you can't, but in that situation, all of us need help. We're not designed to be individuals on our own, dealing with life on our own. When things aren't good, we need people around us.
We're sociable creatures. That's Absolutely. The whole point of what human beings are. And so we thrive off attention. Whether you say you're an introvert or an extrovert, you still do benefit from talking and speaking out loud to other people. And I think that's what people don't quite appreciate, is that there's always somebody there who is going to be listening to you.
Just a question for you, really. When you kind of felt better, did you feel happier than before the breakup? Did you feel stronger when you'd kind of had people around you, realised you need help? Did you get back to a stronger place?
I'm still in the process of getting there, but I certainly feel like I've come a long way, and also it's brought a lot of people closer to me. You realise who really does care for you and who's there for you, and that means a lot. And everyone says, you learn lessons from breakups, or you learn lessons from being fired from work or whatever. And absolutely.
Because I think it is a part of it, is that we do learn from things, and when we have the kind of positive support networks, I think you do end up in a position where you can be even stronger. When I say stronger, I don't mean stern and not still speaking about feelings. What I mean is being more open, being really open to your friends and family. Because I'd imagine now you'd find it much easier to speak to your mum about any further problems, or your friends, because that door's open now, right?
Yeah. God, so I feel like I'm in this GP surgery right now. It's brilliant.
No, but it's true. I mean, I've been through a similar thing. I had a breakup 4 years ago, and it's tough, and it takes a long time. And you're invested in someone. It's not just relationships, but anything that's going to that you feel is going to take or change your life in a certain way. It takes a lot to get over sometimes.
So for you personally, when I was doing my research, you talked about your time. You went to Exeter University, which I did as well, which is great. But when you were training, you went to Truro on a placement, right? And you said that you got to a point where you were slightly mentally unstable.
Yeah, I think I was on placement. I was down in Truro for a couple of years in the hospital and stuff. And it's a beautiful part of the world, but I ended up feeling quite isolated in a certain way. I had most of my friends down there, but I still ended up feeling quite isolated from my family, from my girlfriend and things. And I think that kind of put me in a place where I felt kind of lonely in a way, and that wore me down. It wears you down over time. And eventually I was like, I need to actually speak to someone. I rung my mum, actually, like you did, and said, look, I'm not feeling great. And she rung me every day, and we talked about my thoughts and feelings every day, until I started going, right, I can start, making a positive change here. And my friends as well, and we just kept working on it. And actually, within 3 or 4 months, I was in a much stronger place. Because before that, I would never have said anything to anyone, to be honest.
So you briefly touched on exercise at the beginning, which obviously that helps your mental frame of mind. But as a doctor, what other mechanisms or things do you prescribe in terms of, just helping people feel comfortable to speak out but get better as well?
I try and think of mental health rather than just individual things. I try and look at it as like a multifaceted approach. So whether it's exercise to help with endorphins and mindfulness, whether it's what you're eating, that definitely plays a role in mental health as well. Your work, your family, your friends, and also loving yourself and looking after yourself as well. Giving time to meditate and relax. There's all sorts of aspects in that, and seeing it in that way, I think, gives you the best chance to have, good mental health. I think a lot of the time people, when things start to go the wrong way, they drop the good things and pick up some bad habits. So then maybe they stop going to the gym, the food goes out the window, they stop doing mindfulness because they don't really feel like doing it. They don't want to chat to their friends because they're feeling down, and they start drinking, maybe taking things they shouldn't take, and actually it's a spiral. Then you've dropped all of the things that are kind of protecting you and might build you back up, because it's hard, and sometimes you don't feel like going to the gym when you feel rubbish, but it's realizing that those things are necessities to keep you going, really.
What would you say personally to somebody who comes to you as a GP and says, look, I need some advice right now? Because I've read a lot with therapists that men in particular, they don't want to go see a therapist because they talk about emotions a lot in therapy, which obviously I've been to as well, and I don't mind saying that I have been because it has helped me. But men want the solution straight away, and I think that's what people don't realise is therapy isn't. They're not going to rustle up this solution because there is no right solution. But going to a therapist is beneficial to talk about these things, because even if your friends or family that can't talk about it with you and you don't feel comfortable with it, their job is to confidentially talk about it with you and hopefully help you out.
Yeah, so if your mental health, you are struggling with your mental health, and the other factors aren't enough that we've talked about, then the treatment of mental health conditions is, again, multifaceted. So if you were to go and see your GP, the first steps would be, try just admitting that there is an issue. And I say admitting, it's almost like as guilt, I don't mean that at all. What I mean is, opening up and just taking those first steps and talking and letting someone know that you're not okay, because that's absolutely fine. There's no weakness in that whatsoever. Then the next steps really are, one, looking at medication. Are there medications that can be a benefit? If you're depressed or anxious, some medications we use, it's called SSRIs, that help boost the serotonin, the mood hormone in your brain. A lot of people think, I don't want to take a pill because that just tries to make it all go away. It's false. Not true at all, actually. If you think of the pills as almost like an energy boost, it gives you the energy to fix the issues that you have. It won't solve them, but it will give you a little bit of energy, a bit of a pick-up in a way when you most need it to get you going. Then, therapy is a great way of, being able to open up in a confidential environment with an expert who's also out looking in on your situation. It's sometimes hard when you're talking to family and friends. It is really helpful, and I think it helped me a lot, but it can be difficult sometimes because you need that outside expert perspective. So that I think therapy is very useful as well. And depending on what the issues are that you have, there's lots of different types of therapy to be had. So there's loads of different kind of treatments, and it's about looking at the approach from all different aspects together with the lifestyle changes that I think will help a lot of people.
It's also important to say that this is obviously not only exclusive to men as well. Yeah. I think people, obviously, you can say that women are much better at talking about it.
It's to everyone. I mean, this, what I'm talking about, the lifestyle and the treatments, it's for everyone. It is really for everyone. Taking those steps, opening up, speak to someone. Your GP will have dealt with, the same thing plenty of times. And that's not to say that you're not an individual, but it's to say that they're there to help you and they care and they're not going to judge you or think that you're not successful. My worry was when I was like, I'm feeling, down at the moment. Will the medical council think that I'm not strong enough to be a doctor? Will I be weak? Will they not let me pass? And that's absolute rubbish. I did well at medical school and I went to a very good hospital and stuff, and it hasn't made a difference to, I think, my performance as a doctor. So, don't see it as a failure at all. Everyone will go through a period of their life where they're not feeling 100%. I don't think there's anyone that has lived an entire lifetime without having a rough patch. That's for sure.
Definitely. Talking about when you came out the villa and stuff, obviously it is massive in the news, has been, because people are talking about the support of big corporations like ITV, and it's also now becoming a massive issue for corporate companies as well, who feel obliged now to provide support if somebody needs to go see somebody. But for you, when you came out of the villa, what did you think the support was like? I mean, I know you spoke on ITV News a couple of weeks ago, but
you do your research, don't you? Fair play. I mean, for me, I can only speak, from my perspective. So ITV, I think, were really good with me. I asked for some therapy given everything that's happened in the summer. I am very happy, but there has been some things that I kind of wanted to go through. And I asked for therapy in the morning. By the afternoon, appointment was being organised. So for me, I've got to say it was good. But I can only speak from my own perspective. I do think that looking at companies, organisations, employees as a whole, and I've said this before, I actually think that providing access to mental health support, signposting, at least, should be part of legislation. When you talk about health and safety, we always talk about the physical components of health and safety, but I think mental health should be a part of that as well. It should be within the infrastructure of every organisation that there is an appointed person that someone can go to if they're struggling, who then can, put you in the right direction or put you in contact with services that can help. That really should be a part of legislation, in my opinion.
It's also not exclusive purely to companies as well. I've been working on this for a while, and all universities and all students now pretty much have access to a student wellbeing centre or an organisation within the university or a school that are there to help provide support, which is incredible. Because if you think 5-10 years ago, they probably wouldn't have had that platform to give support to students. And I think students really, I hope now are able to, and young adults are able to open up and speak to these people.
I think we are having positive changes at the moment. Awareness around mental health is obviously huge at the moment. There are changes being made, but I guess another aspect that I kind of like to mention really is that it's all very well us raising awareness of this, and that is really important. I'm not taking away from that, but we also need to make sure the services are there. The NHS is very stretched at the moment. Mental health services are some of the most stretched across the whole of healthcare, really. In the community, if you refer someone to see a psychiatrist, they could be waiting 6 months. So I think we need to make sure that our mental health services are properly funded, because the people working with them are working really hard. But if you haven't got enough staff, haven't got enough funds, with a population that's growing and a more awareness of mental health, we're going to struggle.
Completely. I think people often look at mental health and they go, oh, that's not a real illness, where we now know it really is. People can really struggle mentally to cope with this stuff, and that's why the infrastructure on mental health is becoming so much more relevant in today's society, which is brilliant.
I think, I've tried to say before that mental health and physical health is one. You can't really pull the two apart. If your mental health is poor, you're not going to want to go and exercise. You're going to eat poorly. You might drink a lot of alcohol. You're going to end up with heart disease or possibly diabetes, heart attack, stroke. So that's a physical expression of maybe your mental health problems. And then the opposite direction, if you've got poor physical health and you're not able to do the things you want to do, then your mental health will suffer. If you can't go out and go for bike rides or go on holidays because your physical health's poor, it'll affect your mental health. So there's no way you can separate the two things, actually.
Definitely. Okay, Alex, what piece of advice have you held on to in your life that has really kind of helped you get to where you are today, and what do you think that someone might benefit from this?
So when I was at medical school, I had a little bit of advice from someone, and they said, particularly when I was probably struggling a little bit, do in life what makes you happy. And what I really took from that was, when you come to crossroads and you're trying to make decisions, you're trying to kind of like take a path, a journey in life, focus on what you think will make you happy and what will improve your life and the people around you as well. Sometimes we worry about the decisions we're making because, what will other people think, or will I get judged for doing that? Forget about all that. What is important to you and what will make you feel enriched and happy, and that's the most important thing for me.
I think people realise that you can have unconditional love for your friends and family, but at the end of the day, the most important person should be you. Your self-preservation is the most important thing.
Well, it's also a part of if you're not happy, then how can you spread happiness and joy and care and love and compassion to people around you? I think a lot of the time we end up doing things in life because we're expected to, or society expects us to do it. For example, like with social media, I look at social media and go, I could try and do all these pictures, taking modelling pictures in the corner of a whatever, but actually what makes me happy, and that's what the question I asked myself was doing things related to healthcare and whatever, so I think that's what's so important. Just go with what, follow your heart, go with what you believe in.
What does the word headstrong mean to you?
I think the word headstrong to me actually means being open and having the strength within to share how you truly feel. I think headstrong isn't about being stern, it isn't about being quiet, it isn't about just getting through life on your own. It's about having the strength to open up even when there's a pressure to keep quiet.
That was very good. That's going to be the opening of the podcast.
Well, thank you.
Guys, definitely go check out Alex's podcast, which is
The Waiting Room. We've got another episode coming very soon, yeah.
I hope you guys listen to that, really tune in, and I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. Thanks so much, Alex, for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thank you to you so much for asking me to come on the show. It's amazing what you're doing, and I think people will really benefit from you being so open. So fantastic, and good luck with auditions.
Thanks. Thanks, man. What a brilliant first episode with Dr. Alex. Thanks so much to him and his expertise on all things mental health. What a seriously inspiring individual, and long may it continue. If you want to follow Dr. Alex, go check out his Instagram page and his podcast for more. So that's it for episode 1. If you like the podcast, subscribe. It's all for free, so you can catch the rest of my brilliant guests coming up in this first series. If you loved it, also just tell your family and friends. We want to reach as many people as possible to continue raising awareness about mental health. Thank you once again to Dr. Alex, to Jack Graham Thomas for editing, John Primrose, Harry Neal, Jack Huxley, Independent Talent, Neil and Georgie, and of course, to all of you people for listening. It means the world, so I hope we can get you on a path to becoming headstrong.